AF Seltzer is now live in over 2,500 locations across the United States. We're now available in Florida, Georgia, Alabama, Tennessee, North Carolina, Ohio, Idaho, Illinois, Michigan, Montana, Oregon, and Texas. Go to hardafseltzer.com today, click on the store locator, enter your city or zip, and find the nearest location closest to you. Welcome to Drinking Bros, presented by GhostBed.com. Yeah, welcome to Drinking Bros, kids. Got a big old Tuesday show for Dad Ass. And we got a dude on the show here who's not only sexy, but he's also very charming.
Thanks, brother.
Yeah, I just made that up. I
mean, you got to say something, right?
Yeah, I didn't know where to go with that. Because charming seems like a stretch. You are online, though.
Yep.
You are online. This is Ian Carroll. If you don't know who that is, you've probably seen his face a million times over and over again, explaining to us dummies what is going on in the world. If you don't mind, I'll brag on your ding-dong for a second here. We've used your clips on this show probably 6-8 times a year in simple explanation videos about what's going on and kind of connecting the dots between weird stories. And certainly we have endless of those stories that are going on today. Right now, number one trending in the world is Epstein. And you've made numerous videos on Epstein. Now, Dan and I talked about this at length a little bit yesterday on Drinkin' Bros Fake News. At this point, the files haven't been released. I'm starting to question it. I don't know if we're going to get the answers we want. And if we do, and it's redacted and everybody's not on there, everybody's going to bitch. This is a no-win situation unless you just drop all the files immediately right now. Where do you live on that?
I'm right there with you. I mean, the whole American people know it, and we almost have more information in the public eye as far as who's on the list than we're expecting the list to actually contain at this point. Like I was saying off air just a second ago that I'm almost more planning to be looking at what they're not including than getting any information from what they do include, because the fact of the matter is when you're talking about blackmail of all the top politicians in our country, you're talking about a situation where you either expose all of them or every single one you don't expose is actively working against you from their position of power to stop you from exposing it. So it's really an all or nothing game.
It is, but I mean, as you look at this right now, what's stopping them?
Well,
for real.
So, you know, when you have your greatest ally, you want to give them a little peek first and see what they want to scrub.
Yep.
Right?
I think that's what everyone's suspecting.
Yeah,
right
this whole Epstein thing was a Mossad operation. I don't think anybody doubts that. Bongino was, we talked about this yesterday, but Bongino was talking about it, how some Middle Eastern power was responsible for this. I'm like, yeah, okay, so which Muslim country chose Jeffrey Epstein to run their fucking intelligence operation? I can tell you which one. None of them. God damn it.
No.
That's fucking retarded. Like, you got almost there, bud.
Yeah.
You were so close.
The whole ring of Jewish billionaires running a trafficking ring, and they're going to be working with an Arab nation.
Yeah, I mean, it just doesn't make any sense.
No,
right?
it doesn't.
Like Jewish American billionaires running a sex trafficking ring, and it's funded by Oman. No,
Which
I'm sorry,
leads me
dude.
to wonder, like, how could Dan not know? Like,
He know. Well, maybe
he's
he's
kind of playing a game.
I do. Yeah, he's a
Right?
smart guy.
Yeah.
He knows. He did. He's one of the best financial crimes investigators in the history of this country. So he knows exactly what's going on.
Which makes me excited because that's a pretty tactical way to put it. And he cut right to the heart that we all know.
Yeah.
But the fact, like, sometimes we know a thing and we need to really remind ourselves of these key pieces. And in this case, he reminded us very clearly that it's not that Jeffrey Epstein was the sole custodian of that footage. And by raiding Epstein's houses and everything, they got the footage, but they did not get every copy of the footage. Israel still has all that footage. And so just that reminder informs how we look at the political landscape right now around this disclosure.
Okay, so because I had not heard that. What do you think is on this footage?
Well, it's secret camera recordings of very powerful people doing salacious acts, probably mostly with minors. Epstein's trafficking ring seems like it was mostly minor girls. Like, there's different trafficking rings that tailor and cater to different needs. And so Epstein was more affiliated with trafficking young girls because I think that was his preference, and it makes sense to set up traffickers that are, shall we say, like aligned to their sexual preferences, because simultaneously Leslie Wexner, the bankroll of most of Epstein's operation.
From the Ohio State University?
Exactly. He also, when he was running Victoria's Secret, he bought Abercrombie & Fitch, which is also Hollister, and he immediately put in his own guy as CEO, and that dude just got busted for running a male sex trafficking ring out of those companies with their male models. So
he was gay. Les Wexner was gay.
Exactly.
So I understand that, separating the circles and all that other shit for sure.
Yeah.
But for me, the footage that Israel has, here's what I can't figure out. If we just release the list and say, hey, we got all this shit or whatever, and let's say the footage comes out afterwards, who gives a
that's
fuck?
one way to deal with it, right? Like if somebody's trying to blackmail you, the best possible thing you can do is to just put the information out yourself.
Yes.
And say, suck my dick.
Yep.
Right? But the fallout from it, so a lot of people stop pretty short in this part of the discussion.
Yep.
They think that the fallout is going to be that, oh, we can't have ties with Israel anymore. That's not even close to the fallout. The fallout is that none of this could have happened without active participation from people in the U.S. intelligence community.
Yep. Mm-hmm.
Could not have happened, right? Which means that's effectively treason, right? So treason's a tricky one. It's very difficult to prosecute because, one, the country has to be adversarial. It has to be a country. It can't be like a terrorist organization. That's a completely separate charge. It has to be a separate country, and you have to not just provide aid and comfort to them, but you have to do something that constitutes them becoming a threat to us that they weren't before, right? And this completely applies, in my opinion, right?
Yeah.
Like it makes very clear that Israel is an adversarial country for us, at least in that regard, right? Not that we don't spy on everybody too. I'm certain we do. But there's spying, and then there's fucking running a coordinated billion-dollar operation over 15 fucking years to entrap American politicians and business people so you can blackmail them to make them vote for Israel shit. You know what I mean? That's a completely
100%.
different thing. So it casts Israel as an adversarial country now, which makes that treason part quite a bit more tempting to pursue, in my opinion.
I see it as a straight-up act of war, honestly. Because these days, most warfare, especially between great powers, is subversion and it's all espionage.
Yeah.
And so this degree of espionage is clearly an act of war. And I think that we don't know the full extent of what that blackmail has been used to incentivize or coerce. It could just be incentivizing voting on pro-Israel amendments, but it could also be killing stories that were egregious that we never even heard of because they got killed. And there's a point you just made that we're kind of passing over, that the best thing to do is to just get the information out. If you get blackmailed, just get that stuff out and just deal with the fallout. Because a lot of times, and I suspect that most of the Epstein blackmail has done this, people that get blackmailed get scared. They don't put it all out right away. And then a request for another crime comes through. And rather than being exposed by the blackmail material, you commit another crime on behalf of your blackmailers. And then you commit another crime. And pretty soon you are indistinguishable from the people blackmailing you. You've essentially joined the organization.
So here's what I can't figure out then is, if you're going to run on this, Trump, and look, I've loved what he's done the first couple weeks. I mean, this is fucking awesome. This is what we voted for. However, this was one of the big ones you said would be released on day one.
Yeah.
The Kash Patel. We were all behind Kash Patel, Dan Bongino. That's a fun pick. All of these are fun because we thought we were going to get the answers we were looking for here. Now, last week I said, if this doesn't come out by Monday, you're fucked in this, and you're not getting anything you want here.
Yeah.
And also, it makes the last 3 weeks look like shit because then you're willing to give up certain things and go after certain targets, but then other ones you're willing to protect for what fucking reason? Then it makes everybody question everything else you're fucking doing.
Yeah, the smartest play that the U.S. has right now is to talk to people other than Netanyahu and the Israeli government, and effectively, as much as I don't like meddling, but I think it's important in this scenario to launch a complete coup against him. Right? Yep. Get him the fuck out of there. Lay everything on him, even if it wasn't. Right? Even if it wasn't, and reset the relationship. That's the only way that things go well for both countries, in my opinion. Right?
100%.
Not that we should fucking lie to people or anything. Although the government, how can they even not lie at this point? But certainly, Netanyahu's been the driver of a lot of this stuff. Certainly, he's got underlings around him that have been part of it as well. But I mean, you have to know the history of how all this went down. About Scott Horton's got a great paper on this about Netanyahu's support of Hamas over the years. He didn't want a two-state solution.
Yep.
So we either look the other way or indirectly fund Hamas so they can stand themselves up and become a terror organization. And when people think Palestine, they think Hamas now, right?
Yep.
And that was his goal, and it came back to bite him in the ass. And again, you have to remember all this stuff. He's a 2-time war vet with them. His brother died at the hands of a Palestinian, blah, blah, blah. Like, this guy's got to go. He was almost out the door before October 7th happened.
Yeah.
Right? Like, he was trying to overturn the Supreme Court in Israel. He was basically trying to reform it from the executive branch, which Montesquieu would fucking have a problem with, right? As would every founder of the United States. And they were about to throw him in prison for it. And all this shit happened. So it's like, when you look at this in its totality, it's very clear that in the same way that Biden's ineffectual leadership led us down a negative path, right? His overbearing leadership, right, and tunnel vision when it comes to everything else but Hamas and Palestine has led Israel down the path that they're in right now. And it's not good for them. They may cheer when a bunch of Hamas people get killed, and good for them. I guess it's war. Cheer for your team, but you're not actually doing your country any good right now.
No. And they're also not doing like global Judaism any good, because by having, like, for example, I posted this video about Epstein yesterday that's very explicitly just about Epstein and his network. And I clearly say in it that there's lots of good Jews around the world, but inherently Jewish people from around the world jump into those comment sections and are trying to defend, like, subvert and distract from the Epstein problem in order to defend Israel.
Pull
it's
up
like,
this
that's
video.
not
Forgive
good.
me, I haven't seen it. We'll put it live on air here.
It's like 8 minutes, yeah. I don't know if you want to play the whole thing. Yeah,
Okay.
it's an 8 or 9 minute video. But I mean, it's just exactly what you're already thinking, that like, we know clearly that Epstein was a Mossad asset, and here's all the people that ran his organization that are Jewish. And we know clearly they're not going to be working for an Arab nation. So like, until we solve it's really just laying all that out. But because of the relationship of Israel to like the Jewish identity globally, as long as Israel is doing horrible things, subverting America, blackmailing, child trafficking, whatever it is that people take offense with, that is inherently forcing Jewish people all around the world to make this choice of either I betray my religion and my people, or I defend Israel at all costs. And when the cost is defending a pedophile trafficking network that's blackmailing American politicians, that's not a good look for any Jewish people.
Yeah.
Right.
And it's not, I mean, in the same way that, you know, this tribalism happens here in the States too. People get locked into one.
Yeah.
We abandon religion, and I'm not religious, but we abandoned religion and took on partisanship as our new religion. Yep. And you get put in these situations where you have to defend the indefensible all the time.
Dude.
Well, I mean, Pete, look at the way that some people still defend Trump's COVID response and the bump stock ban and all that other horse shit that they tried to. He was like on the cusp of trying to push federal red flag laws. That video of him and Pam Bondi is floating around again now.
Yeah.
It's like, these are bad things, and it's your job to clean your own fucking house. It's not your job to stand in the way and protect bad ideas behind you. It's your job to turn the fuck around and say, stop. Yep. This is my honor you're trading on. You're not doing this to me, right? Well, and now we're talking about a fucking 5,000-year-old religion, right? So it's like, this is deep rooted. I mean,
it's complicated.
It's complicated. So,
But
Israel,
you got to rip. Why not just rip the fucking Band-Aid off? And
because Israel doesn't have strong leadership right now.
Yep.
They have very bad leadership. That's why.
The strong leadership is behind the scenes.
It is, yeah. Look at what's happened in just 1 month in the United States. What strong leadership can really do for a country versus what weak leadership did the past 4 years. Yeah. You can see it, man. So people need somebody in Israel that's a fucking warrior, by the way. Somebody that was most people over there were IDF at some point, but some kind of Shin Bet or some fucking special operator to take charge of that country and be like, hey, fuck this bullshit. We're not playing these chess games anymore. And look, I don't have a problem with Zionism, frankly, right? I'm not one. I don't give a fuck because it's not my goddamn country. But for Jews and Israeli people to want to have their own country, that seems reasonable to me. I mean, we fucking slaughter all the Indians to take ours. Yeah. So let's not pretend like we're up on some high horse. But these fucking little moves behind the scenes that have drastic and catastrophic blowback decades into the future, right? That never seems to stop. That shit's got to go away.
Yep.
I agree. But the other part of this is now you have politicians. This was MTG a few hours ago, if you want to play this clip, Bob, of asking about the release of these goddamn things. And it's like, now your own party's questioning why you're not releasing shit, and that's not great either. Go ahead and play this.
I support all the lists being released. I want to see Epstein's list. I want to see the list of the sexual misconduct slush fund.
So do I.
You know, members of Congress and senators that taxpayer money was used to pay out their victims. I want to see all the list.
Including the Gates report.
If they're going to release one, release them all.
Okay, thank you.
Okay, so you have that, and then you have the two fun people that we all wanted in there, Cash and Dan Bongino. The time is now, and the clock is fucking ticking. And this is a story that is not going away. What's the final outcome, do you think? What is that?
I mean, this is just my opinion, which is always evolving. Like, I'm new to this game. But what I'm seeing now...
Which is what I love about your content, by the way.
Thank you. Yeah, I mean, I think it's what allows me to communicate with the normies, because I'm basically a normie. But I'm seeing more and more that the way that Israel's influence over our government has seeped in over decades at this point, and certainly at least like 15 years of direct blackmail subversion, that is not now just the blackmail. Now that is the blackmail's sort of ties and influences and impacts over years of decision making. And so I'm more and more suspecting that it's, even if all the politicians were sincere in their desire to root out corruption, and they tried, I don't think that is going to solve the problem from the inside out. I think that the problem is actually going to be solved by people like us in the media, slowly changing the national discourse. Because as the national discourse becomes more and more open about it and treats it just like any other topic, that gives the grace for politicians to be able to speak more openly, to be able to speak and know they're going to be backed up when they're telling the truth instead. Like, that starts to undermine, because when you're doing subversive tactics that Israel is so good at, it's super critical to control the narrative around those subversive tactics, because otherwise you work against yourself. If you don't have the propaganda in place to support a lie or to support a half-truth, then by trying to tell it in the public square, you actually just undermine yourself and expose yourself as a liar. And so as we all collectively demystify the actual questions, the problems, that's why I see Dan Bongino coming out and saying those things is a really interesting step, because he's sort of inviting us, here, come on in one step closer.
It's breadcrumbs, for
Bingo.
sure.
Like, I feel comfortable saying this much, but I'm not going to go that far. I'm going to let the media that are not government officials take that. Because he could lose his job. If he had said Israel in that interview right there, it's very possible there'd be a firestorm, there'd be a Matt Gaetz type situation. It would end with him not actually getting that position. So I see us as slowly walking closer and closer, and it's almost like they're handing us the ball, being like, I'm not going to say it, but if any of you want to say it, take it away. And I think it's going to be a slow unwinding.
Well, I'm gonna kind of relate it to something I did in the past here. So let's say I have a hard decision with the Epstein one, right? Yep. Save it for last. There was a thing in this. I did a 5-picture deal in Hollywood where I owed 5 scripts, but they were all based on different things, locations, everything else. I looked at it from easiest to hardest. Yep. And then I turned in the easiest one first, so it made everybody happy, and then the deal would continue, right?
Yep.
But it was the easiest one. So let's say you're using that same model. Why not drop JFK tomorrow? Then at least, like, hey, dude, we've given you something, and now we're working on the other ones, man, and everybody feels good about that first victory. Why not do that?
Well, we've got to have a taxpayer-funded fucking safari first.
Yeah,
right?
There's got to
be a field trip so that people who have no idea what they're doing can go investigate. Like, the people that were on the Warren Commission are in their 80s and 90s now.
Yeah.
You're not going to interview them and finding out anything new. Their brains are bullshit.
And a number of them were complicit in the first place.
Yeah.
Like, that's the whole point of the Warren Commission.
Yeah.
So like, let's go to the criminals and ask them if they committed the crime.
But what does that hurt now? So give people one.
I don't know. Cassius
Go
said,
MLK 2 if you want, or reverse the order. And then just, slowly every 2 days kind of, and then until you figure out the biggest answer, which is the Epstein thing. And because otherwise, you're all sitting there with your dicks in your hands, and then there's a lot of finger pointing, and it's within the Republican Party. Nobody from the Democratic Party is asking for this shit to come out.
Which is kind of weird.
Very weird.
A little weird.
But everybody in the Republican Party is, where it's like, great, do it. Pam Bondi on Friday night. It's sitting on my desk. Awesome. Don't even fucking say that comment out in public if you're not going to do it.
Yep.
Like,
yeah, I'm inclined to give them a little grace, just because I know, like, even in my relatively non-political life, there are complicated political, like, maneuverings that happen with, just this space of podcasting and media and all that. And I can only imagine all the like, if you're trying to expose the Epstein situation, we're talking billions of dollars, multiple extremely powerful factions, not just the Israeli government, that are interested in keeping that under wraps. So I could understand that there might be, like, legal attacks going on behind the scenes, other stuff. And so, like, I'm willing to give them some time, but it's getting more and more suspicious by the day. And they've talked a big talk, and they're doing some of it, like going after big pharma. RFK is starting to like go after their advertising dollars, going after just like the corruption of USA. Like, the more pieces of the corrupt establishment you do take down, even if you're not releasing the documents, that is undermining just all these various corrupt groups that tend to be aligned around. We're all like, when you have multiple criminal organizations, even if they're not all Israel, even the other criminal organizations are often incentivized to be aligned with each other because they're all getting fat on the same goose, so to speak. Yeah. So I see them as making progress, but you're right. Let's get started.
Well, I mean, it takes time to unravel. Let's say, so there was a coup in 1963 in America, right? And everything since then has been fake. Literally everything. And Trump broke it. That's why they're so fucking mad at him. He broke that shit. But it takes time to unravel decades of nonsense. And I don't have any special knowledge on this, but here's how this works in practical ways. Let's say that the U.S. policy behind the scenes is regime change in Israel, which it should be, frankly, right? Whether we stop supporting them or whether we support a coup internally or whatever. The way that you would go about, like Marco Rubio is not going to go to the Secretary of State of Israel and be like, hey, let's get this guy out of here, right? One of my friends is going to go talk to their counterpart over there and be like, hey, what are people saying about Netanyahu right now? And like, oh, well, blah, blah, blah. And it's like, yeah, well, this is what we're hearing from some of the other guys, is that everybody hates him and want to get him the fuck out of there. And it's like, yeah, I've heard that too. It's like, well, if you were going to pick somebody, who would it be?
Yeah.
You know what I mean? To replace him. Okay, but those are interesting names. Do any of those guys have support with the military and the political class in Israel? Okay, that's our guy. That's how that conversation goes, right? And it takes some amount of time.
It's often spread out across months of quiet meetings and stuff.
Yeah, you can't just sit down and make a decision like that because it becomes obvious, right? And then the moves you make are calculated. I mean, do you know who Alan Turing is?
Yeah,
invented the computer, basically. So they broke the Enigma code. But the thing they did that was actually brilliant, in my opinion, was they developed an algorithm that told them which instances they should intervene in without letting the Germans know we broke the code. It's the most
interesting. I didn't know about that.
It's the most ingenious military strategy plan that I've ever seen in my life, right? And so they literally had an algorithm that told them which boats to save and which to let get blown up and all this stuff. And you, in your head, you're like, man, that's fucked up that they allowed that to happen, but it won the goddamn war and it saved an estimated 16 million lives in Europe. So this stuff takes time, is all I'm saying.
And I'm not saying
if dropping this list that has a bunch of Mossad agents and maybe Netanyahu himself on it, right, from back in the day, in between his prime ministerships, is going to kick up dust that you can't fucking see through to get this job done, then you got to fucking do something about that.
But 4 different people can't run off of day one. I'm going to release this, I'm going to release this, I'm going to release this without everyone asking questions and then without your party looking like a bunch of fucking morons of, are you guys on it? Is that why you're not releasing it?
It does feel a little bit like jumping the gun and getting too excited ahead of schedule.
Nobody was out there clamoring for the MLK files, right? We all know he was cream pieing 16-year-olds and it wasn't...
the FBI told him to kill himself in an official letter.
And then it wasn't the guy who,
Now, to be fair, I've done that to a number of people.
You sure have.
That's why I used to get fucking banned on Instagram for that all the time.
Because Dan's like, man, if you're not careful, I'm going to cream pie you and then make you kill yourself. But it was just empty threats, obviously, He was never going to cream pie him. Like the killing part, the cream pieing, no. But don't even bring it up then. Like, don't even bring it up, or, hey, we'll have a special investigation to get to the bottom of it. Kick the can down the fucking street a little bit and say, hey, dude, we're going to get a full Senate hearing, and it's going to happen in July. I mean, awesome.
I could see an argument being made for it was worth jumping the gun on that rhetoric in order to, if they are sincere and they're like, we need to win the presidency to do these things, and we need to build some hype in order to get elected. I can understand the political machinations of jumping the gun on it and kind of fooling the American people about the timing of what we're trying to do here, just so that we because American people don't understand these complex decisions of war. They don't none of us live in that world. So to us, we need to hear something like release the Epstein files now. But realistically, what they meant is like I understand them sort of telling us what we need to hear in order to be able to do the work and us feeling betrayed by that. But at the same time, as a media person, my job is to hold them to account and to watch very carefully what they're doing.
And also, if that is the strategy, then release JFK, MLK, RFK.
Do those first, and then just slow roll it, dude.
Release those over the course of 3 to 6 months.
Yes.
Although, what's to say that those files do not directly implicate Israel in that as well?
It's possible, with JFK.
Although I'm of the mind, like, so people in my camp, like the anti-Semite camp on Twitter, most of them are of the mind that it's like Israel did JFK. I'm not actually of that mind. I think that Israel supported it. I think that Israel probably did some of the mob connections of like, hey, we know a guy over there that knows some shooters that, like, Jacob Rubenstein, all these things, but I think that probably, like, we're looking much more at the CIA and at George Bush and stuff like that.
Yeah, George H.W. Bush was the primary on that.
Along with Alan Dulles.
And he certainly, I mean, of course they would use Israel there because they were our closest intelligence asset back then. We were still kind of like button up against MI6 back in the day.
Yeah.
But Israel and us
bonded from the start.
Yeah, from the start, we were pretty close. So in the early 60s, that would have been our closest intelligence tie.
And the CIA was honestly pretty damn incompetent for those first 10 to 20 years. Have you guys read Legacy of Ashes by Tim Weiner? Like, that opened my eyes so much, because today we have in the zeitgeist is that, like, the CIA is all powerful. They're watching everything. They know everything. But, like, if you actually know the history of the CIA, they couldn't do shit, especially when they were founded. And so they leaned on Israel and Israeli intelligence dramatically in those first 10 to 20 years. And so even like I feel like if the CIA had tried to plan this whole thing on their own without the help of the Israeli intelligence kind of mind, I bet it would have been even more botched than it actually was.
Yeah, and we got to be able to have, to the other point about anti-Israel or whatever the fuck people say, there are quite a few like grifting groiper retards out there that just hate Jews. There's a lot of them,
and I wouldn't be surprised. They try to like subversive.
Yeah, they're probably fucking Israeli intelligence. To be honest,
it's a common tactic. We got all kinds of videos online of Jewish people spray painting swastikas on the outside of a building and then getting caught doing it to like try to stoke the conversation.
No difference than Antifa helping BLM and vice versa.
There was one just the other day. I mentioned yesterday that tanks were rolling through Gaza again, and there's this video of a tank. An Israeli tank rolling through Gaza, and then somebody just zooms in on a fucking light pole, and there's a swastika on there. It's like Palestinian people didn't fucking get on Etsy and get a swastika sticker and tape it to a that didn't happen.
They're not making deliveries right now unless they're by drone.
Yeah, I mean, that didn't happen. And listen, it's not in defense of anybody or the other, but it's like, pick your fucking battles with this propaganda stuff.
Exactly.
You know what I mean? It just doesn't make it drives people in the wrong direction. Like, if you want to win, and to your earlier point, there's a lot of dumb fucking racist people also that are involved in that, but a lot of it is Russian intelligence, Chinese intelligence, just trying to start shit. So we stay cooped up over there, right?
Exactly.
But when Israel plays into it, like, you're fucking stepping on your own dick. What are you doing?
Yeah.
Why? Why would you even do that? It doesn't make any sense, right?
Well, it's the continuation of a decades-old doctrine of painting Israel as a victim, which was a very, very brilliant propaganda technique. In the 60s, 70s, 80s, when they were a young, new state fighting for their survival and all that. But the problem is that when you try to maintain that victim narrative all the way into this modern day, where they're like the top funding recipient from the global empire of America, and they're dropping more bombs on Gaza than we dropped in all of World War II, statistics like that. It's like, clearly you're not the victim. And trying to maintain that victim status just leads to these absolutely ridiculous, attempts at propaganda.
Yeah, and it just doesn't, like, there's a big subset of the population who's actually woke now in the way that it originally was meant. Yeah. Who are just like, I don't believe anything you're saying anymore, right? Which doesn't do them any favors. And to the other part, I don't understand the idea that, and I know it's just propaganda, but I don't understand the idea that criticizing the state of Israel is somehow anti-Semitic. Read the Old Testament. It is highly critical of the state of Israel. So is God anti-Semitic? Are you out of your fucking mind?
I don't look at it from a religion standpoint with those guys. I look at it more versus their country versus ours and what they're doing to it. I don't really give a fuck about their religion. And one I care about, truthfully, is Muslim, where it's just like, okay, cool, man. Their ideals, they want a fucking death to the America and all that other shit. But I care about what they're doing to the institution of America and with the Mossad shit and everything else, right? Yeah. Because I don't think it's for some kind of control or for Jews to take over the world or any of that nonsense. I just think it's one country trying to outsmart another country, trying to get intelligence and vice versa. We're probably doing it to everybody else.
Well, there is something of a cabal, though, right? In the same way that Skull and Bones is a cabal. It's nonpartisan, and they just look. This is what I say all the time for years on this show. The aristocracy will protect itself before they'll protect any person, any fucking ideal, or any political party. They'll circle the wagons around themselves first, right? And that's what global diaspora of Jewish people do as well, to some degree. It's not like the people that we know, that you know out there in the audience that are Jewish, they don't give a fuck about any of this.
No.
You know what I mean? They don't care. They're fucking, they have jobs. You know what I mean?
None.
But the 1/10 of 1% of these people who are wealthy who think that they're in the same way that Bill Gates is a crazy person who thinks he's going to modify fucking crops and mosquitoes to save the world.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? These people fucking like Soros, meddle in the affairs of all these countries because they are in some kind of weird fucking cult that they think everybody's going to get us. Everybody's going to get us. So we've got to do something. And look, maybe they're right. Who knows?
Maybe at the end of the day.
But it's not my fucking problem, and you're not going to come into my country with that bullshit and disrupt what we're fucking doing here.
Yep.
Yeah, and then I'll switch it here for you with the Diddy thing, because you posted about it the other day. Yet another one where, this trial is coming up very, very quickly here.
Yep.
May 6th, it gets kicked off. If he makes it to May 6th.
Do you think he gets baby oil in prison? Is that something you can get there?
I'm sure you can get anything in prison.
Yeah, from the canteen.
He can get lubricant.
He's just trading cigarettes for.
I think it's lotion though.
Oh, yeah. That's not going to.
Well, you're ashy. You get ashy.
But lotion has viscosity.
Yeah,
it does.
Yeah, I wonder if prisoners are lining up to get involved with Diddy in prison, or they're lining up to beat him up, or I wonder what kind of treatment he's getting from his fellow inmates.
I think he's locked away.
Yeah,
just solitary.
Yeah, because there's Luigi's in there. There's a bunch of big hitters in there.
That other dude, Bankman-Fried, is in there as well.
Yeah, right. All in the same
SBF.
Same
They're all in the
little
same.
family.
And it's, by the way, it's a small place. So it's Manhattan, and people don't really understand, but it's like a building. It's like maybe 2 blocks long. Where you're just like, okay, cool.
Just downtown Manhattan.
It's only like 1,200 people, so it's not like
600 feds.
It's not like Apple downtown or Facebook or something. So that's what it is. But with that coming up, rumor is there's politicians in that as well.
Oh yeah. I mean, I suspect that the conversation around Israel, the conversation around Diddy, I suspect that there's sort of 2 parallel conversations going on right now that are getting conflated because we don't have the facts, in that we're not talking about the whole government of Israel operating this trafficking ring. It's a clandestine operation operated by a few people out of their intelligence agencies. And intelligence agencies have always been working with organized crime. You're not running a trafficking ring without interfacing with the human trafficking networks, which is the organized crime networks.
Yeah, the OSS tried to pay Lucky Luciano.
Bingo.
So Lucky Luciano,
Oh, they did pay Lucky Luciano.
They did.
Well, it didn't work, but they paid him and gave him asylum, basically, because he was going to get deported for all of his crimes.
Yeah.
They gave him asylum in America, offered him and a shitload of fucking money to go clip Mussolini.
Yep.
Right, and it was OC back in the old world that was going to go clip Mussolini. Never ended up happening, obviously, because for various reasons, but this is age-old shit, right?
But then after the war, what they did is they said, like, Italy was a key. I mean, it's the seat of the Roman Catholic Church. They can't let the Vatican get overrun by Russian communists. And so one of the first things the CIA did before they were even officially the CIA is they just took a whole bunch of bags of money and handed them to the mafia in Sicily and said, go buy this election. So that way they would elect a pro-American person. So they eventually did get their way through similar tactics, partnering directly with the mafia. And so my point is that these organizations, even if Diddy, suppose Diddy is not run by the Jews and it's not Israel and all whatever conspiracy theories are online.
That one I don't think.
But suppose it's just Diddy just running, his organization for some other, clandestine organized crime situation. They're all interfacing with the same organized crime networks around the world. The human traffickers, the drug traffickers. These are interlocking networks of global trade.
Yes.
And so inherently the same sort of services and clients are interfacing with the Diddy network, are interfacing with the Epstein network, and are interfacing with the other networks that we don't even know yet. Like a Epstein client, when he's on vacation in LA, he still wants to party.
Yeah.
And so I suspect that the Diddy list is not like, people for a while were smearing it as like, you're just like getting lost in this whole rapper, like no one cares about like the music. And it's just that is not small fish. Like Obama and
Right.
Because
he was there for all.
And I'll tell you, the thing about whatever Diddy list might exist that I'm really curious about are the real estate developers and financial people that are involved.
Yep.
Because with that amount of drug trafficking, cartels are involved. And our suspicion, and there's plenty of smoke around it, there's some, I guess, circumstantial evidence around it as well, that politicians in the Southwest in America have been assisting the cartel and parking their money in real estate all over the United States.
Yep.
Like there's reports of these huge real estate developments in fucking Indiana that are basically bankrolled by the cartels, right? They've been washing their money through American politicians and specifically real estate for
Colorado's
years.
got some, Arizona's got some.
Which could explain some of the fucking massive fluctuations in housing costs over the years,
100%.
right? Like if you wanted to fucking, if this is a multi-tier conspiracy, and I'm just spitballing here, but agencies involved, WF, whomever, right? Then there, or just assholes trying to make money, and you have cartel involvement and you have real estate involvement, then why don't you push policies in Congress that will inevitably result in a fucking market crash, which is what, what's that fucking Gaylord's name that used to be a congressman?
Which one?
George Santos.
Barney Frank.
Oh.
Barney Frank is the one that made, he's the one that said, it's not fair that some people can't afford houses.
Yeah.
Right? So we're going to give subprime loans to people.
Yep.
And then somebody made a phone call to some asshole and fucking on Wall Street and said, hey, you can bundle these and sell them as a security, basically. They're like, well, how?
That asshole was largely Larry Fink.
Yeah, it was Larry Fink. So they bundled a bunch of A-plus mortgages for a while, sold those as securities because they are securities. A-plus rated mortgages do not fail ever, right? But then they started putting in A's and all the way down to B's and C's, right? So people that should not have owned the homes, they knew they were going to foreclose on them. That Barney Frank legislation got passed in between 99 and 2000. Right, in that time period, and it took 7 fucking years. All it took, it didn't even take a decade for it to bring our housing market to its knees and the global economy, by the way. Yeah. And then you fucking go out there with cartel money and you start buying up everything, right? It's not just BlackRock doing this shit. I guarantee you there's a cartel involved 100%. In this. So I want to see the names on the Diddy list and on the Epstein list, to be fair, of people that are real estate developers and people in the financial community. Because those motherfuckers stripped, they picked America up by its ankles and shook it and took all the change that fell on the fucking ground.
Yeah, you're so on point. You start talking about real estate and you look at who is Gavin Newsom's primary backers. It's the real estate industry in California, right?
Yep.
It's like, things that make you wonder.
Yeah, Ron Burkle's on that list, and
I mean, Soros gave him $1.5 million too.
Yes, dude.
Yeah, it's not just the one; it's a whole group of buddies.
It's a whole thing. So, if one of these does fall first, what do you predict it's going to be?
I predict that it's going to be somewhat simultaneous because I don't think that either one falls all at once. For example, neither one is a list. It's not like Epstein has like a client list where he has names and numbers and amounts and like it's just a bunch of files and documents and evidence of various forms. And there's probably a few lists in there. Same with the Diddy files, right? It's video, it's photo, it's evidence, it's documentation. A lot of it is even transcripts of conversations. And so if the Diddy list comes out, for example, I expect that starts investigations into a lot of other celebrities like Jay-Z or Beyonce or like Drake or who else. And I mean, hopefully some of the executives and the power players above them too. And same with the Epstein list. If the Epstein list comes out, it's not like we immediately case closed, everyone's arrested. It starts this process of investigation and digging and opening. Like legal ramifications take years to play out. And so I think that there's no world in which it's not going to take 3 years for the Diddy list to start to pop while the Epstein list goes off. They're both going to start to roll simultaneously, and I think that their implications will directly impact one another. And I think it's completely out of any American's ability to comprehend the sort of overturning of our cultural order that's about to happen. Because even if you look at the last 100 years of American history, the Church and Pike committees come to mind as the last time that we had any reckoning of like, what is the secret power groups in America doing right now? And even that didn't really, it produced outrage and it produced a lot of very important information. But I would argue that this is far more substantial and far more ingrained. And even just the Diddy list, if that comes out, my entire generation, I'm a millennial, I was born in 92, my entire generation grew up on music produced by people that got their record deals because they were having butt sex. That's insane. And then we also watched many of my heroes apparently get jelly-brained for speaking out against it, whether that was Michael Jackson or Britney Spears, although she wasn't speaking out against anything. Lord knows what happened there.
Are you a Michael Jackson truther?
Yeah, so in the Diddy, so check this out.
Come on.
The thing that
you don't think he was licking kids' assholes?
No, and the thing that's got me is that
who did he beat up?
Prince.
No.
Not Prince.
No.
Fuck.
I don't know the story of it.
Who was
very
it?
well.
God,
Stay on brand. Go ahead.
Yeah.
Keep going.
So the thing that woke me up to Michael
Tupac.
Jackson, never thought about it, but I was doing the Diddy investigation. And then some commenter pointed out to me, hey, Diddy's head of security, Fahim Muhammad, that was Michael Jackson's head of security. And I started digging into it. And this is how my Diddy stuff blew up, is I dug into this, and then Candace picked it up, and then that blew up. Fahim Muhammad, he graduated. Candace Owens picked the story.
Yes.
But Fahim Muhammad,
for the audience.
Yeah, he was the head of security for Michael Jackson. And at the time, he was like aged 21 to 23, somewhere in that range. Michael Jackson had been protected by like his father figure, this guy named, I'm pretty sure his name was Bill, for his entire career until Bill was 70s, had to retire. And then Michael Jackson cycled through a couple different heads of security until he landed on this guy named Fahim Muhammad, who had just graduated from college with a business and marketing degree 1 or 2 years before. And then he somehow becomes the head of security for the King of Pop. And then within a year, the King of Pop dies, with Fahim Muhammad being first or second on the scene. The story is that he was second on the scene, but you never know who was first on the scene.
In the house.
In the house. When Michael Jackson's found dead by the doctor, Fahim Muhammad was the second person to walk into that room.
Dr. Conrad?
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah, and so you can watch Fahim Muhammad's testimony on the stand. And so that's maybe suspicious on its own. But what happens next is Fahim Muhammad immediately, after failing to protect the King of Pop, at age 23, gets appointed to be the head of security for P. Diddy, which, if you're the head of security for P. Diddy's operation, you need to know where the drugs are, where the guns are, where the kids are, where the trafficking's happened. Otherwise, you're not doing your job. And so when you take what we know about Diddy's operation and Fahim's involvement with that, and then you look backwards at like, how the hell did he get the job as head of security for Michael Jackson in the first place? And so then that got me digging into the Michael Jackson history and discovering basic things like, holy shit, the FBI investigated Michael Jackson for a full decade. And they released a report that said they found zero evidence of any of the claims against him. They seized all of his all of his hard drives, computers, and devices. And you can look up the reports where they have them all listed by serial number and all that. And every single report is just a blank page that says no evidence.
Really?
Yeah.
Why were they investigating him in the first place?
Well, because there was a gigantic smear campaign that was orchestrated in the media calling him Wacko Jacko and trying to pay kids to come out against him. Conveniently, every child that came out against him, for as far as I could find and looking into them all, they all seemed to be at the middle, like right in a rise into a Hollywood career. Like, this kid is coming out to say Michael Jackson abused him,
like
but right now he is promoting his brand new TV show that he just got this great gig on. Whereas the Macaulay Culkins of the world went to bat for Michael Jackson and said, no, I knew him personally very well over a long period of time. He was an amazing human. He never did anything untoward. I'll stand by him forever. And so when you look at the two and you look at the smear tactics that we have seen the music industry use against people since then, it just, to me, it does not add up. It doesn't square. So I lean towards he probably was mostly innocent, but a super fucking weird, abused, messed up in the brain kind of a guy. But he seems to have been, by my read, probably genuinely just a weird motherfucker that didn't understand that he's acting super strange, but he's coming from a place of love. I don't know for sure. But I just look at how he got treated, how, like, Kanye is another good example. Kanye is a fucking psychopath. He's got all kinds of mental problems. He's a piece of shit today for sure. But that being said, the treatment he got, even if he's a piece of shit, like, his personal trainer is texting him. Do you know about Harley Pasternak's text to him? Right? Yeah. What personal trainer is texting one of the biggest Hollywood stars in the world saying, you're going to shut up about the Jews, or I'm going to take you to an insane asylum and drug you out of your mind until you no longer are allowed to see your kids? His personal trainer sent him that.
Yeah.
It's crazy, right? And then...
And he alleges his ex-wife did that.
All sorts of stuff, right?
To him, and yes.
And then all of a sudden, Kanye disappears for a while, comes back, and is a totally different human when he, like, left and came back and became Ye and is now, like, started a porn site and is walking around with his Bianca hoe and like tweeting, like selling swastikas and all this crazy shit he's doing ever since, to me just feels like another iteration of some form of, I don't know if it's an MK Ultra thing or just drug them until they're squishy or blackmail them or whatever it is. I don't know. But it feels like Hollywood was founded on, Hollywood was founded on ideals, I think, initially. Like, let's go and make our movies away from the New York ingrained movie scene. We're going to go found our own thing. And that's, they were a lot of them were fucking crazy psychos too. If you look into the original history of Hollywood, like read the book Hollywood Babylon, it's fucked up.
I've read that book.
Oh my God.
A lot of Marxist nonsense going on out there
and
as
just
well.
total subversion of Christian culture, like perverted.
I mean, it was just straight up Marxism for the most part. Yeah.
But beyond that, then Hollywood got in really tight with the mob because the mob was running a shitload of liquor through the 20s and needed to launder that money. And there's no better way to launder money than a movie set where it's like, we had to pay $5 million for this set.
Oh, you can go over budget real quick, dude. Yeah,
quick.
and it's a lot of cash transactions.
Yeah, and so Hollywood and the music industry too have been deep in with organized crime for most of their like modern history, and that those tactics tend to intertwine. The people tend to take dual leadership positions, and if you pretty quickly wind up with Hollywood that is deeply intertwined with like, oh, we'll make that person disappear. Oh, they'll get pneumonia. Oh, they'll go crazy. Like, oh, you'll get blackmailed. And if you do good, you'll get rewarded by all these great parties where you can just do crazy shit and no one will ever come for you.
But to that point, because Hollywood is almost dead at this point.
Yeah, they are
for
dying.
real. So there's nothing to extract anymore. You can't hide that wealth. Those investors no longer exist for any of that shit. Very, very hard to wash money through there.
Yeah.
Now's the time. If you're going to do all of this shit and pick off all of these people, music industry is fucking dead. I mean, unless you have concerts, sorry, you're not making a goddamn dollar.
Live Nation does well, and the bands are making more money on merchandising than they are on concerts, except for Taylor Swift. Everybody else is making more money selling T-shirts than they are playing shows.
But at the concerts. So, like, you still got to play the concert, right? You still got to have the hits, and you still got to do that to draw people out. It's like a 3-tiered system to finally get that one tier where you used to get to collect almost all 3 back in the day. Now you don't anymore. But with that, why not expose all of it now with everybody so close to the bottom? This would just rip the Band-Aid off and end it all.
It feels like it is.
I feel like you need a replacement, though, right? Like part of creative destruction is the replacement part, right? So these things happen throughout time. The cotton gin makes additional slavery not necessary anymore, right? And things like that happen all the time. AI did it. The internet did it. Fucking the printing press did it. So on and so forth. All these things happen, but that's part of natural evolution. If you're trying to actually selectively edit history like this, then you have to have something to slide into that. Otherwise, you don't. What you don't want is a bunch of bored Americans. Yeah. Right.
I mean, I would argue you're exactly right, and I would argue that actually the solution is ingrained in the where the response is coming from. What I mean by that is that the thing that is exposing the Diddy thing in the music industry specifically is sort of the proliferation of information and the opening up of the internet space, because rumors fly more quickly and videos can be shared more quickly. So like Jaguar Wright can go on a podcast and talk about what her friend saw at that party, and she has a video because that all those like little micro movements of technology and culture evolving into this decentralized. It's exactly what's happening in our media space too, where it used to be you needed to have a network job to have airtime. And now airtime is dictated by who people relate to on the other side of the screen. And if they like what you're making, they'll just give you the platform.
I relate to you more than I do with David Muir on ABC News, which is why I've followed you.
Here's why. Because media used to be about reporting or sharing the news with someone, but that's not what it is anymore.
Yeah.
Now it's giving context to the information that everybody already has access to, and it's 2 completely separate jobs.
Well said.
Right?
Yeah. It's opinion programming.
Yeah, it's 2 completely separate jobs. Now, you can call it opinion programming, but really what it is, and I don't disagree with that offhand, but really what it is giving people, like if you're a smart media person, you give people questions and not answers, in my opinion, right?
Yep.
Because questions, one, makes them go out and look for stuff, and it also brings them back later.
It's more engaging.
Yeah.
But the old model's built on providing an answer because it's propaganda.
Here's what happened
Here's
today.
the narrative.
Boom, boom, boom.
Same with the music industry. The music industry we're learning more and more. It's not about the top hits are what you all listen to. The top hits are who took it in the ass the most times in order to get their deals. And we'll just put them on the top list because we own the radio stations. We're the ones that give them the play.
And it's no different than the 1940s and 50s and 60s where the fucking Italian mob was just beating people up to get their music on the radio.
Exactly.
You know what I mean?
Right.
Like nothing's changed except for the butthole.
But now what we have is we have people that are starting to crack the code, and we have a number of musicians like Connor.
Oh my God!
Connor comes to mind.
I just did him on.
Right?
I just talked about him on this morning show.
May comes to mind, the Australian singer that made that Carmageddon song. And artists are starting to build platforms from the ground up using social media because it's about relationship. And then suddenly they can sell out shows and suddenly they can build their own brand just like we do in our media space.
Same thing happened with stand-up comedy.
Exactly.
Like people get, and look, it's not good for stand-up comedy in my opinion because people, these two skill sets are not interchangeable.
Yeah.
But somebody develops an audience making fucking Vine videos.
Totally different.
Now they're doing fucking 15-minute sets. Like,
right,
good luck,
right.
bud. Like some
Right.
people have done well with it. Most have not, in my
Yeah.
opinion.
Very different skill set.
But to my point, though, I think if you're going to do all of this, do it right now because
Yep.
Hollywood is at its weakest. The music industry is at its weakest. The media is at its weakest. Rip the Band-Aid off entirely and start over right now because it feels like that's what we're doing with our government. Now, everybody's shocked at the speed at which it's happening. I would like to argue that the reason why it is happening so quickly is also a beautiful distraction for, hey, man, we can go and pick apart more shit because the thing they cared about 2 days ago, they don't fucking care about anymore because they care about this new thing that's, holy shit, everybody's freaking out about.
Oh my God, Elon's baby mama.
Right. So why not just do it to all the industries?
I think you need
Start
a backup.
over.
I think you need I think you need backup content that you have some control over. That's the way government thinks. You know what I mean? They like Operation Mockingbird, Hollywood and the American press for many, many years was just a propaganda tool.
Yep.
Right? Like certainly there were independent creators that were making stuff. I'm not saying that every TV show or movie you ever watched was propaganda, but a fucking lot of them were. And a lot of the big ones were, right? A lot of the big producers were doing that shit. So what happens now when Americans have nothing left but us and Joe Rogan to listen to and Ian Carroll? And then they go start reading books and looking shit up and are like, oh, this whole thing's been a fucking lie this whole time. The government will not risk that. So that's why they're not moving fast.
But I think it's a good storyline, and then it's a good starting place where we start over, and then we go from there, and then see what happens as a nation. Because I don't know that you're getting it back. I think
100%.
I think with Hollywood, if you wanted to give that a shot with movies and everything else, and really give it a huge go again, because I think this current system is dead. Move Hollywood to Texas or Oklahoma, middle of the country, where it's like these red state movies always fucking crush, always have these popcorn movies, everything else. You don't need the Amelia Perez that's nominated for 15 Oscars on about the trans and the other bullshit.
It's just the
like,
capital from fucking Hunger Games at this point.
That's it.
Nobody wants to watch that shit.
But
well
move
said.
it there, right? Nashville. You want to move the music industry to Nashville or somewhere else? Try to start over, put all the best of the best together and try to figure it the fuck out. Great.
I would argue that the music industry will never return because AI is already replacing it. And within 3 years, I will be able to make a Hollywood blockbuster from my own computer with zero help from anybody. Because I think that most people do not pay attention to AI video progress unless they have some reason to because they work with it or something. And I make a point of like keeping tabs because holy shit, it is moving fast in the last 2 years especially. And I really think that like the amount of money required to make movies the old way is a centralized model. You need these giant studios, these giant behemoth organizations, and already like AI video is starting to replace that immediately.
And I'm gonna do a shameless plug here for my kid here because this just happened to me last night. He asked me, we've been talking about this on the show a little bit. He asked me to start a YouTube channel for him. He's 10. All of his friends do it or whatever.
Yeah,
it's
good
like
for him.
for kicking, right? So that's all it is. There's this dude named Destroying. It's just a kicker. He's got like 6 million subscribers, and there's another one from UCF. And so he asked me to make these videos. I've never seen this in my entire life, and this will go back to immediately what you said. Bob, I'm going to send this to the Drinkin Bros podcast email real quick. Play this video, and I'm going to go over the options here that it gave me. And I was one of the very first people who put a YouTube video up in 2006 that went viral. It was on the homepage.
Whoa, I didn't know that.
Yeah, it was a homepage. And
Hell
they used to
yeah,
take
dude.
5 sketches and put them on a homepage. But I did it for a friend of mine at his behest where he was trying to blow his production company and everything else. It was a throwaway sketch and all that other shit. And it took forever to edit and everything else. But it was for him and it was cool and positive. I had no idea it was going to go to this. Bob, did it go to Drinkin Bros email? Yeah, I got it. All right, so we're making these like weird, like fun videos. This is only like a 20-second video, which is why I'm going to show you. So first of all, the people that the kids are following are these TikTok people.
Yep.
So this is that Connor guy that you were talking about. My kid asked to put this in the video.
Connor Price. What's his name?
Yeah, play that first video all the way to the left. Yeah, Connor Price.
Yep.
And then you can turn the music on. Yeah.
sure you know what you're doing.
Yeah. This is a perfect example of what's going on.
Yeah. Well, last time I checked, I'm still hot. Real hot. Kept it dope with.
For a 10-year-old kid, that's fucking impossible, by the way. But we were just fucking around. But we get back. Not only does he know about production, but then we go into the Connor Price thing. And I said, and he goes, Dad, what do you think of this music? It's 10. And I go, I actually like it.
Yeah.
And I go, the problem is, I'm looking at all of his songs. They're all 1 minute and 44 seconds. And I'm like, so you're not talented enough to write a traditional 3-minute song? Like, couldn't figure that out, right? That was one. Put the song in. Then the next option is, hey, do you want to use this song or do you want to create your own? Yep. I was like, what do you mean create my own? There's now an AI button on YouTube that will create your song for you.
Oh, I didn't know they had it integrated into YouTube now.
It's on there.
Yeah, is it Sora? What's the backing tech?
Yeah, Sora is cool.
Sora's very good.
I work with another podcast that uses Sora to make their videos and songs and everything. It's
you
so
can
cool.
now switch out that song with an original song, so that way, an original, I'm going to use heavy air quotes on this.
Because it's like made from the other song. AI just kind of like.
Yes, it's going to do a different version of that dude's song for this video. However, we keep the money for it because technically I press the AI button and I don't have, Connor Price doesn't get the money. And this will go back to your point about music not making any money anymore. So like, but does that make it a creator economy where everybody can create their own music and everything else?
So
YouTube uses Lyria and Dream Track, not Sora.
Word.
I've never used those, so I don't know if they're good. I've heard of them.
I mean, they're all just going to push each other and push each other. It's an arms race.
I just used the song that my kid wanted because, you know, it's his thing and I don't give a shit.
To your point about the creative aspect, I was talking to Greg Hurwitz about this too because he's written fucking 25
Brilliant
books.
author, yes.
He's my favorite author. He's written so many books. But I think there's still going to be, until we get to an AGI, like a generalized intelligence, I think there's going to be stuff that AI can't do.
I agree. 100%. I 100% agree.
There's something called Moravec's paradox, right? Where if you take an average human being, like literally average, like 100 IQ American, versus the best AI that we have, and you give them both a math problem to do, AI is going to win. Chess, AI is going to win. But if you give them a basic human task, they can't do it. Yep. They still can't do it, right?
And to your point, like let's say Grok 3 I was using the other night, still can't put a can of Hard AF seltzer in somebody's hand.
Yep.
And even though you have the ability to upload the photo, awesome. Why can't you fucking do it? Writing-wise, the writing is shit, to be honest with you. Bob, our producer back there, uses a lot of it to look it up on Google. Google now, you type in whatever subject, they're going to give you their AI bullshit first.
Yep.
And then the rest of the answers that I would rather have from an article that are real. I would say, Bob, what do you think it is? 50-50 that some of those are right and most of those are wrong?
Yeah, it pulls a lot of weird stuff still, basically. It doesn't give you like incorrect statistics about the fact. It'll give you like something not related to
it won't understand. But I think that even once we have AGI, like the full, like once we have iRobot AI, even then it will never be able to replace human relationship because we will inherently know. And I think that porn is the best place to look at this, is that a lot of men will just, like, I think we're headed to a really dark future where probably 80% of American men are basically just going to be sucked into like robots and porn because it'll just be an infinite generation.
But you won't know.
Content. You won't know. But when
it's happening in Japan already.
But when it is a real human,
it happened to me the other day on Instagram.
Human. Oh yeah, all the time. I mean, they have AI influencers that are like, they aren't porn. They're just like an AI girl.
It's a hot girl with huge tits and a bikini, and they're just going back and forth on a swing out back.
Right. But imagine an AI version of what we're doing today, and you put both our show and an AI version of our show online. People would still. They're like, maybe the AI show is funny and has some cool shit on it, but it will never have that sense of, I know that you guys are real people in my mind, and so I'm having a relationship with your content because our opinions are human opinions. And they'll inherently always know that that AI porn is just a black box of Satan of just like spitting out whatever you want to be addicted to. The AI talk shows will just be a black box of opinions of whatever you want it to spit out. And in our minds, we kind of know that like that can be fun for video games. It'll make awesome shooting games. It'll make awesome stuff, awesome art and music. But we'll always kind of know that like when I listen to Connor Price make his song, it's human creativity that I'm listening to.
Yeah,
it's because
I agree. I agree.
It's because the thing that fucking makes all of this useful is that we share it with one another, right? Because that's how we've evolved.
Yep.
There's this idea that you'll be able to, and man, this will become a thing. I just don't think it'll be super popular. You can go onto a website or in an app and say, write me a John Grisham style thriller, and I want these elements to be in there. Write it just for me. And maybe you write it, maybe they make it into an audiobook and you listen to it just right there on the app and you listen to it. But the fact that the only thing that will make it meaningful is sharing it with another person.
And having that same conversation about what the thing is.
This is what media has always been. It's been fucking people huddled around a fire listening to stories about their ancestors, to huddling around a fucking radio, listening to C.S. Lewis, to huddled around the TV, watching the president speak, to fucking talking about memes on the goddamn internet. We have always been like this for tens of thousands of years, and it's not going to change.
And even last night, for this 20-second video from my kid, another reason I wanted to bring it up, when I looked at that option, do you want to play the artist or do you want to have an AI version? I was like, man, no, dude. If this thing takes off or whatever takes off, I want the fucking dude to get paid, man. I want the real human to get paid. I don't want some AI recreation of some bullshit. So because there's still that part of me too.
That thought right there, I think it's so big because I think that as we get closer and closer to this artificial reality in totality, that everything can be just generated. Am I going to sit down and read a whole AI novel? Fuck no.
No.
That's just obviously a waste of my time.
They're boring, by the way. Have you tried to take a read
even
at
once
some of
they're
those?
interesting, though. Even once AI is, suppose in the future AI gets so good that it can write the best novel in the world, but it'll write 1 million of them. You just know in your mind that this is an endless black hole of, it is the ultimate sort of example of what I think biblically you would say is Satan, of this it's infinite entertainment and knowledge and just shit, but there's no end to it. There's no muse to it. There's no inspiration to it. And I think we're already seeing this where we're right now there's this huge movement, especially in the right wing in general, for people to come back to family values and realizing that it's sharing experiences with people that really as human adds value to your life. And sure, AI can generate as many hot girls as you want to look at on Instagram. You can even buy a robot in 10 years that is fleshy and will be even better than your real girlfriend. But it'll never be this human connection that is actually meaningful. And I think that as the digital age progresses forwards, it's making us more aware that we've been making half choices with fake content and with fake reality and with fake relationships for so long that we're starting to remember that actually when you take those ideas to their fullest, they're empty and hollow promises, and they add no value to our lives.
It's Gamer. It's that movie Gamer with Gerard Butler. You're just hooked up to a fucking feeding tube, getting fat in a chair somewhere, and nobody wants to live like that in reality.
And I think we're going to get more and more to a split society of choice where a lot of people will choose the unreality. And then the people that choose the reality, it's just going to be night and day between the types of people that exist in this world.
And to be fair, they should be allowed to do whatever the fuck they want.
Yeah.
If they want to do that, go for it.
As long as they're not hurting anyone.
Yeah, and you want to go sit in a room with Scarlett Johansson,
do what you want.
Do whatever you want
It's
to do.
literally just addicts versus not addicts.
But that's really what it is, right?
Yeah.
That'll be, instead of homeless fentanyl addicts on the streets, 50 years from now, that's what we'll have, people living in fucking group housing.
Yeah, welfare.
Hooked up to machines.
Group
that's what it'll be.
AI addicts.
And then we'll probably develop some Soma.
Yeah.
Right? Whatever the Brave New World drug is to drop in their fucking mouth so they'll just shut the fuck up.
Oh, yeah.
And then maybe we turn them into batteries like the Matrix. Although the human body as a battery is fucking stupid. That's the dumbest part of that movie.
Yeah, obviously.
A potato produces more electricity than a fucking human being.
But that'd be a funny movie, but not quite as
It would be if it was Mr. fucking Potato Head as Neo. That'd be funny as shit.
Sweet, dude.
Can you imagine that?
It'd be sweet. But with
so
you,
hilarious.
That was part of the other reason I was a fan was not only did I like your content material, but the look of you looked like a dude that we would hang out with in real life, where it was just like, all right, cool. I'm not listening to some fucking dork in his basement or anything else. This looks like a normal fucking rad dude that I'd hang out with at a bar who's just kind of telling us stories about shit that we're already talking about, where it was like, okay, cool, man.
Yeah. I mean, it was very strategic how I started it intentionally, on TikTok to access the huge youth, but also in a way that was sort of, relatable to a wide variety of people. And for a while, I had leftists and left-wing and right-wing people in my comments fighting over whose side I was on.
I couldn't figure it out.
It's like, he's a communist. No,
I
he's a
couldn't
fucking
figure
libertarian.
I couldn't figure out if you were just doing stories.
Yeah. I mean, in a lot of ways, like I am in the middle, and I am kind of a bit of both. But it is kind of funny to watch. Like leftists will repost my stuff now, and more be like, "See, we got him. He's exposed." And I'm like, "Thanks for the free advertising, bro."
That's it.
Idiots.
That's all it is.
It's so stupid.
At the end of the day, so you did know what you were doing?
Yeah, I mean, no, but I knew a lot more than most when they start. I had dated a very successful Instagram model for a little while and had been studying the game. I'd been working on my own content stuff in a different space, trying to do like ultra running content. And I'm a very strategic thinker.
Ultra running, like marathon running and shit.
Yeah,
like
ultra
that?
marathon. So I was making like
Cam
adventure. Yeah, like just not as fast as him.
Yeah.
So I had like a
Cam's
drone.
been on the show. He's a buddy
and was
of ours.
like doing all sorts of mountain running, like film with the the 360 camera, and it was not blowing up because that's inherently like pick me content of like I'm so cool, look at my shit. And I realized a lot of things. Like one good example of a strategy that kind of is how I did all of the pieces was no one cares who you are if you have no followers. You're not a fucking expert. Even if you are a PhD, no one fucking cares. There's this social proofing on social media that happens where if you see a big follower number, you say this person is important. I'm curious what they have to say. And if they're going to preach at you and they have a big following, that could work if you agree with them. But if you have 50 followers and you're trying to preach at people like you know what you're talking about, doesn't matter if you're right. They don't fucking care. You're a nobody. And so I started intentionally turning the spotlight away from look at me, I'm cool, and turned it to the information and said, I'm just a regular dude that doesn't know shit. I wonder who owns the media.
I'm a vessel to this.
Bingo.
Okay. Gotcha.
And once the following grew, I knew that I would get more and more and more leeway to offer my opinions, which I have been. But inherently putting the information first is a good example of one of those strategies that just obviously paid dividends. And every content creator should do that.
Right. Tech has the golden rule of technology, whether it's media or anything else, is user experience. And it always will be, right? It always will be.
It is. But his numbers are so wild. I mean, you have 1.1 million followers on Twitter, and you just joined a year and a half ago.
Meteoric, dude. I'm still less than 2 years into this. I started in May of 2023.
Yeah.
Yeah. And it was 300,000 followers a month for the first 3 months. So I hit almost 1 million within 3 months. And that's when I started to learn enough that I started to look at the CIA and I looked at Jeffrey Epstein and I started to do a little bit of looking into Israel. And once I started to talk about topics that, because TikTok is the most ban happy of all platforms, my bar went like, and then just like leveled out at 900K for months and months and months.
Our TikTok has been none of us have it. Our social media girl
they can jump off a fucking cliff and die.
It's been banned 8 times.
Yeah.
Isn't it close to done anyways? Like nobody's come in with a bid to my knowledge.
I mean, it's such a valuable algorithm and technology and just platform of
the
users.
algorithm is insane. I'll give you that because it can turn a nobody into a somebody overnight.
Bingo. Although not as much anymore, but yes, it can. And so I think inherently it will live on in a future iteration. I'm just curious who buys it and what they do with it. To back to your point earlier, Dan, about do we form a government going forwards from all these disclosures? Do we form a government based on honesty and just being like adults, or do we form a government or do we like take this like fear approach of like how do we release it all? Like how do we? No, they're like even like the politicians don't want to fucking form a government based upon truth and honesty because they've been getting fat off of lies. But in all of these spaces, if we go forwards and stop the banning, like TikTok would be an infinitely better platform overnight if they just stopped banning people and just opened it up to free speech.
Yeah.
And I think that that's the direction forwards in all of our spaces is we're all fucking adults and we just want to live adult lives, respect each other, have conversations. Who fucking cares? Be offended, be enthused, be entertained, do whatever you want to do. Just don't hurt people. Right. And that's inherently going to make the strongest, healthiest America moving forward.
Yeah. This is The Dark Knight Rises, right?
Yeah.
Like the entire piece in Gotham was built on a lie.
Yep.
And once that lie gets exposed, the entire thing unravels. And we're 60 years into this now, right? We're 60 years into this lie that our government has been on the up and up the whole time. Yeah. Right?
Yeah.
And
but start
what
there.
What a crazy story.
Start there with JFK and then move up.
We're two and a half generations in to everything we've heard has been a fucking lie, right? So it's going to take some time to unravel it, but unraveling it is the only option.
Yeah.
Otherwise, it just keeps compounding and the next thing happens. And at some point, it'll become too big to manage, right?
Yeah.
Somebody will fuck with the wrong group or the bottom will fall out of the economy and people will have nothing left to lose and they're going to start doing some crazy shit.
That's why earlier to your questions earlier, I was kind of dancing around this sort of core concept that I don't think this disclosure of any of these things is really based on anyone's human choices. I think it's an amalgamation of hundreds of and thousands of choices, even millions, as every person in the world chooses what to believe. And as we all make choices about what we believe about the world and what we're going to disclose and what we're going to do, all of those add up to what the outcome is. And I think that it's all being driven by the opening of technology. As technology makes communication more decentralized and more, it levels the playing field, just like the printing press walked us a little closer, and then like mass production of books, and then internet, and then all these things. They just inherently open the conversation to a decentralized model, and that model will inherently break centralized lying systems.
Yeah, I mean, that's what happened. That's there were certainly key players and events that happened for the Protestant Reformation, but the most important one, and to include Henry VIII, by the way, so one of the a former vassal of the church, who's now opposed to it. Certainly, that had some role, but nothing moved the needle on the Protestant Reformation. Not Luther and his 95 Theses, not Henry VIII and the fucking Church of England, like Gutenberg, like the printing press, and then. In 1511, the King James Bible from King James, right? Those two things, printing the Bible, mass-produced in English for the very first time in human history, gave the peasant the same access to God that the king had for the first time, and that's what the internet has been for us, right? And we are going through an American Reformation right now, where people, and it's why we need good leadership, because it is a period of great tumult. It can go one way or the other. We can we can produce several generations of nihilists, or several generations of idiots, or several generations of people who are like, realize what their real power is, which is to collectively say no. That's the real power.
But I think it starts now.
Yeah, it started.
Now.
It started 5 years ago, frankly. Yeah. Well, 8 years ago, whenever Trump ran the first time. That'll be when we 200 years from now, when they look back on this period. That's when it would have started. And you as an individual, the people listening to this show that have the temerity to question things, it's really important that you keep your wits about you and not act like a fucking jackass, right? Not fall into this, well, I guess all the Jews are bad, or I guess all the Democrats, or all the Republicans, or whatever the fuck. Any of these top-line platitudes that make your life easier are wrong. All of them are wrong. You have to challenge things on an individual basis every single time, and have the sense and courage to fucking pour through all this stuff yourself and make smart decisions, and make decisions that are going to be that are going to carry us into the future in a meaningful way, instead of just spiking the football when you're right, or taking your ball and going home when you're wrong.
I think that's the biggest white pill in my mind, is this sort of taking that, like, yes, so much to all of that. When you take that whole conclusion forwards a few steps, you realize that technology will always progress. That can't be stopped. And so technology is progressing and forcing this new media and discussion space. And that is forcing us as adults, as members of society, to all mature. Because suddenly you can't outsource your news to a professional. You can't outsource your opinions to a program. Suddenly we all have to think critically and wake up, and we're all realizing that you can either be a big fucking baby online, or you can be a mature adult that engages in rational discussion. And pretty quickly, when adults are standing in a room having a conversation, and like a Destiny walks in with his blue hair and starts fucking shouting, everyone's like, we see this. We see what this is.
It's fake and gay, as people like to say.
And so the fake and gay gets exposed, and the real adults just the conversation progresses, and inherently all the bullshit just outs itself. And I think that we're just naturally walking towards a revolution in our maturity.
Yeah, and it's happening really quickly too. We went from 2010 to 2015, that time period, where the Tea Party rose. That was a bunch of dumb, retarded nonsense, right? It was a mid-wit overreaction to what was actually happening in the world, right? It's like, I see that look, this is what happens.
Well, it starts small with shit like that.
Well, it's like, this is the problem. Just because you don't agree with somebody's solution to something doesn't mean you should dismiss the fact that something is wrong. That's a problem that human beings have for some reason in this tribalistic mindset. But 2010 to 2015, I could post a couple of Facebook memes, right, and change an election. That's what Obama did in 2020. People talk about Russia and blah, blah, blah in fucking 2016. They spent $300,000. The Obama campaign spent $1 billion, right, on digital media.
Smart.
Smart.
Very smart.
But all they did was convince swing state, middle-aged white women that fucking everybody else except for them was racist.
Yeah, well, and
That's it.
We also ran a shitty candidate.
No.
Too,
Forget about that. That doesn't even matter. What matters was they propagandized Americans. Matter of fact, earlier in 2012, before the election, Obama made propagandizing legal again.
Bingo.
Right?
Yeah.
He's the one that did that, just to be clear. So then he runs these campaigns mostly on Meta. It was mostly on Facebook, where it's like, yeah, they're coming after me for the Affordable Care Act. Yeah, we keep drone striking people. Yeah, I said I wasn't going to deport people, but I've deported more people than every president combined before me, right? But they're just saying that because they're fucking racist. And that was the story. And fucking your mom and my mom shared it. Not ours specifically. Ours wouldn't, right?
My mom would.
But Midwestern moms, right?
Or just
people
like,
in swing
half,
states.
half-informed people. I mean, I was one of those people that was taken
We all
in by
were.
it. I
We
was
all were.
young
That's what I'm saying.
and naive, and I was just out trying to snowboard and shit. I didn't care. I'm like, sick, change. Yes, we can.
Yep.
Until I like actually did any amount of research and realized that everything we've been told about him was a fucking lie.
Yeah.
Right down to like his fucking birth certificate. Look it up online and think for yourself. But like it just is so cool to see the lies of all brands start to get like now we're more and more coming to a world where everyone is like, is there evidence? Like, can I find a source?
Yeah.
And it's taking time, right? Because people in our positions have to sort of wake up and sort of lead the way.
Yeah.
Because there's still a lot of fucking dipshits on these screens that have a platform because people want to be confirmation biased that are still just, parroting the same bullshit. But slowly, one by one, we're sort of, I think that people inherently, it's a breath of fresh air to like hanging out with you guys is a huge breath of fresh air because I only met you guys briefly before I came on this podcast, but I just knew from that meeting that it's not like nothing's off limits. We can just talk and we can just have opinions. And even if I disagreed with you strongly on something, we wouldn't like do what some podcasters do where they're like, change the subject.
Yeah, but because for me,
discussion.
like, dude, as a Republican voter, there's still the reason why I care about the list so much. I want all of them out, Republicans and Democrats.
Almost the Republicans more because they're subverting what you care about, right?
And yes, we talk about the deep states.
You should always try to clean your own house first.
Yes, but also you can't be foolish enough to think it's one side and not the other. Yeah. And so let's get them all out of there and then fucking go from there. Yeah. The chat is asking me to ask you a ton of questions here, which we'll fire away from because. Some of these are wild.
Are you secret Jew? I'm just kidding.
Well, close. Are people digging tunnels and under the Brooklyn Bridge?
I don't know shit about the Brooklyn Bridge. I've never been there.
But they were digging tunnels in New York.
And they were digging tunnels.
And that video will never go away.
That's so wild.
The poop mattress is forever emblazoned into the history books.
Still haven't figured. Do you remember? We were talking about this a couple weeks ago, I think. But do you remember that Shane Gillis actually broke that story on accident?
No.
He was on. It wasn't Rogan. I think it was on Ari Shaffir's show, or maybe
I watched. It was like a grainy video, and he was like, "No fucking way."
He was like, "I hear people underneath my building at night," and they're like, "No, you're crazy, dude."
Yeah, it's really funny.
I don't know if he referenced the Jews or anything, but this is like 6 months.
All he said was, "I heard people underneath the building." Yeah, I was like, "Okay."
Yeah.
I mean, on the underground stuff topic, I think that there's a huge, like, not just one story. I think there are multiple stories that are sort of underground related between DUMBs, deep underground military bases, UFO and UAP disclosure, whatever that means. There's a lot of underground stuff going on around that research.
So
the Jews have all kinds of tunnels.
Yeah, but
Hamas has tunnels.
I don't know that Hasidic Jews in New York are involved in the space program.
I'm not saying they're the same thing.
Well, they're using their lasers.
Yeah, I'm just saying that like the average citizens don't realize how far advanced our underground drilling and tunnel building and just building technologies are. I think there's a shitload of stuff that's kept secret underground for various parties and various covert agencies and whatever else that will make great stories over the next 20 years.
I mean, the Jewish mafia in fucking New York was strong about the same time. As a matter of fact, I think it was Murder Inc. that were the enforcers.
Yep.
Right? Like Meyer Lansky and those guys.
That all came out of their days of blackmail and FBI Director J. Edgar Hoover when they had free reign. I mean, they're rum runners, and tunnels have been a classic, classic technique in any kind of smuggling for ages.
Ages.
And now we have the fucking, I mean,
we just got to wonder what they're smuggling. Like, what are they smuggling now?
Oh, there's
Right.
all kinds of whispers in the like satanic ritual abuse disclosure community, which I don't know how to judge how much of it's true, but there's endless stories about like satanic trafficking tunnels under the border.
I've heard that as well.
cities,
Yeah.
and between celebrities' houses. There's always a new conspiracy theory, like the LA fires. The conspiracy was that there was a tunnel from the Getty to everyone's house so they could have secret satanic orgies. And I'm of the mindset where it's like, at this point, it could be fucking true. I don't know.
Right
I just let
below
it
the
be
Getty Museum.
Yeah. Well,
that
yeah.
little
Who
house
fucking
right
knows?
below the Getty Museum. And that's why they try to keep it from burning down.
Allegedly, there's a tunnel from Citizens Bank to the Holiday Inn, so the players can escape in the event of an emergency.
Really?
I don't know. It's Always Sunny in Philadelphia said that.
I bet that's true.
It's probably not true because they ended up getting locked in a broom closet trying to find it. So
But we get a lot of disclosure from TV shows these days.
I've said that. I mean, that's Mockingbird, right? I've said this forever. I think that certain things that have happened in television over the last 60 years or so have been intentionally designed to expose us to shit to get us ready for it once it gets leaked, or to shape our opinion on it. Like the scary aliens.
Exactly.
Are made to look scary because or they're cast as the evil guy. Like maybe E.T.'s a good dude and he's out there somewhere.
Yeah.
Right? There's a whole species of E.T.'s out there and they're helping us somehow. Right.
I think they have to be helping us. Otherwise, we would be fucking dust at this point.
Yeah. The people that I talk to in the agency, and I this sounds crazy. I've talked about it on the show before, so I'm not spreading anything I haven't before. But they say that human beings are in contact with 7 species of aliens.
That is currently the state of disclosure.
It's that is, and they're communicating through gravitational waves. That's my understanding as well, which is how we would communicate interdimensionally as well.
That makes
probably,
sense,
right?
Yeah, that makes sense.
So I mean, there's a lot of weird shit going on, and I think Tommy Lee Jones spoke about this in the first Men in Black movie. Like, a person is smart, but people collectively are fucking stupid and crazy, right? And I don't know what would happen, to be honest, right? We've seen the effects of a progressive loss of religious culture over the past 40, 50 years and what's happened to our country as a state. What happens when they know for a fact none of that shit's real? You know
I
what mean?
actually think that we're in a roundabout way that as science and UAP disclosure comes out, I think it actually is basically going to expose that religions are real and true, but they're just sort of missed metaphors for
I agree with that.
greater state of play.
There's a good book about, not this specifically, there's another book about this, but about mythology throughout all of human history. It's called The Hero with a Thousand Faces. Everybody should read it. And it basically shows that all the hero myths we have, from religion and philosophy to just culture, are basically the same archetype over and over again. And it reminds me of after the Great Flood, if you want to call it that, right? Graham Hancock talks about this. All of these disparate communities across the world that could not possibly have spoken to one another tell the same story of getting wiped the fuck out, and then some tall white ghost-looking motherfucker
with a
showing
funny
up
little handbag,
with a funny little handbag, showing up and teaching them how to build again. And now then we see they're in the same 2,000-year period, fucking pyramids start popping up all over the world that have nothing to do with each other, right? So I think there's probably some truth to that. I think that religion and philosophy are probably in the same way that the Bill of Rights articulate our rights and not provide them, right? Like, you don't bestow rights upon it. They're natural rights, that we're discovering natural truth, and we're all just talking about it in different ways.
I think with religion, I just think it will kind of die out a little bit, except for the Middle East. And here's why. Let's just take United States, for example. It's not as key anymore, and you don't have kids questioning as much. Where, going back to the Death to America thing, when you teach that to a kid over and over and over again since day one, that's who they're going to end up becoming. If you don't do it, and as the generations go on, everybody's it feels like in America, slipping away from religion, not necessarily in a bad way. It's just to say who's right and who's wrong in all of these things. I just think people will become less and less interested because there's realer shit that's going on out there that they're more concerned with.
I think I disagree actually pretty strongly, but I think in some ways I'm disagreeing more on semantics here, in that in the conservative youth, I think there's right now a demonstrable large shift back towards Christianity. Like, the number of young people that are looking into Christianity right now is growing. at least on the right, definitely not on the left. But I think that it's a new Christianity. And I think that we're into an era of revolutionizing these faiths and religions, because so much of the religion is actually control mechanisms that were written into the books over the years for the Catholic Church to control the masses, for the Jewish, whatever they call themselves, to control their masses. And that's getting stripped away. That religion, I think, will die, and that will be good riddance. But I think that that we're and I'm on this exact journey right now. I think collectively we're realizing that what we need most for our children these days is spiritual protection from all of the evil that this thing can contain. And it's not phones specifically. It's just the metaphor of access to addictions, access to sin, access to bad ideas, access to just all the things that will subvert you succeeding in life. And what we need for our children more than school. Like, my kid does not fucking need to know the Pythagorean theorem. What they need to know is not to get addicted to drugs, not to get addicted to pornography, not to get addicted to all of our human failings.
But I'm having conversations about that rather than putting it into a religion.
Exactly.
And that's the difference.
Yeah.
So it's not, again, none of it's tied to religion, and I'm not against it either, where I was brought up Catholic. Yep. And my kids, one of them asked about it. And I said, look, if you want to go to church, I'll take you to any church you want. I don't care what it is.
Yeah, right
no
on.
questions asked, and we'll go. Just tell me when you want to go, and we'll do it. Because Dad, went to a bunch of them growing up in Georgia, and I'm happy to do it. They just don't ask. And then the rest of their friends don't really chat about it at all. However, their ideas and the way that they look after each other, and then there's not a lot of bullying and things like that.
Yeah.
Their ideas and the way they look at life are changing. And then Dan and I have talked about this ad nauseum in regards to like video games. They're going back to like simple shit of like Roblox and Minecraft.
It's kind of funny, right?
You're getting away from the 3D shit, although the 3D shit's the highest quality it could have ever been right now. Yet they're choosing to do this other stuff.
It's the same.
I just think it's a choice.
It's the same thing with the architect from the Matrix talked about. Human beings will reject a fake reality.
Yeah.
It may take some time, but they like the brain, and it may take the next generation to actually do it.
Yep.
But we didn't evolve that way. You can't unprogram 250,000 years of DNA and 10 years of technology. It just won't happen, right? So yeah, we can get caught up in it. We're all addicted. That's what's happening right now.
To a million little things.
Yeah. And the fucking next generation, they're just not addicted in the same way that we were.
No,
right?
and like even
it's because we've been in to be fair, it's a lot of it is because parents specifically have been intentional about not letting them get addicted. I think that's a big thing that's going on right now as well.
Because you set a time limit, or we call it like screen time around the house. So it's like, all right, great, you get X amount of screen time and that's it. But even those videos like I was showing you with my kid, he's more, yes, he loves doing the thing a lot, like the sports a lot. However, he also likes the editing.
Yeah.
Picking songs that his friends like, picking things that'll be cool and shit like that, where you're like, oh, all right. So you're not just trying to go viral tomorrow on something. You just like the process of it.
That's the key.
Which is why I like doing it with him, where I'm like, there is no pressure. There is no, I don't give a fuck if he's a YouTube star. Like, I don't give a shit about any of that. But it's the process of it, and it gives him something to do, build, create on his own.
People like to create.
Yes.
It's an innate part. So
Yeah.
Like we're ants building a civilization. That's what we're doing. And these are fucking just chemical drivers that are making sure we do that. There's a little hiccup from time to time, but now this next generation or two, even, I think the generation older than your sons is doing the same thing, right?
Yeah,
they're becoming more conservative. They're
are.
getting back into the trade. The trades are starting to come back a little bit. All this stuff is happening because we will at some point reject fake reality. We have to, because it's in our nature. Some people call it the Hemingway moment, right? Even though he was a fucking communist, but the Hemingway moment where I'm going to pick up my rifle and go to war. I don't know what's going to happen, but I'm not going to stay here.
But by the way, to your point,
it's part of the human spirit.
I think this last election, it was those kids, because a lot of them were my neighbors, my next door neighbors, and I was, you know, Mike and Carrie. They're kids, and they were great kids, but they were uninterested with all the bullshit of like the fake everything and everything else, and then that's kind of carried over, and then I've got the next generation where it's 10, 6, and whatever, and they're the same way, like. It's none of the advanced cool shit. It's not putting a headset on. There's not one kid in my entire neighborhood. There's 2,000 fucking houses in my fucking neighborhood. It's a huge neighborhood. None of them wear those goddamn helmets with the fake worlds.
VR goggle things.
Never.
Yeah.
Like they have zero interest. I've never been asked.
I don't think that VR will ever be a real thing. AR, augmented reality,
AR is
will
gonna do it,
right?
yeah.
Like
What's the difference?
Like Google glasses with a
AR
heads-up
overlays
display.
it over the real world, so you have digital information and interfacing, but
And that-
not out of the
we
real world.
use that in tech all the time already. Every fucking pilot that exists has had one of those, right?
Yeah.
Some of our new night vision does that as well.
Oh, the possibilities are so badass.
Yeah, I mean, it's fucking dope.
Yeah.
But nobody wants to be, again, there's a certain point. You can call it the uncanny valley when it comes to produced media, but even in your own personal life, there's a point where your mind will reject things that are fake, right? You know it. Because our brains are basically, I've said this a million times, but it's a complicated, complex engine that determines between threats and benefits. It's very good at pattern recognition. That's the thing it's best at, actually. So when you feed it fake bullshit all the time, at some point it's like, oh, this is fucking...
I think it's the same exact maturing process we were talking about a little while ago in the adults and kids growing up in the media, in this media environment. I think that more and more they are just light years ahead in that maturing process. And what makes me think of this is I've got 70-year-old parents that come from this media paradigm of if it's not from mainstream, how could you possibly trust it?
Yeah.
And so when I'm sending them clips of what's going on in the world, like new vaccine study came out showing that vaccine is causing AIDS, and that's a problem. Let's talk about it. Their immediate response is, I can't trust that. It's not from a mainstream source, which is clearly bullshit. But young people growing up, like my parents' view is like, oh no, young people are so easily deceived because they're growing up in this world where there's no direction of who do you trust, not realizing young people are growing up with a far more mature understanding of media, where a kid knows just inherently, with no one even teaching them, that because every piece of media we consume comes from Lord knows fucking who, including Rachel Maddow, who the fuck is she? They see every piece of media as only what it is, not as like gospel, not like it's not inherently true because someone online said it.
Right.
And like 70-year-olds think you need to tell kids that, otherwise they'll be deceived. But like kids know that inherently. And so they're just way more rational and critically thinking. And I think that is tied into what you're saying about how young people are developing, they're like self-immunizing against all of these pitfalls.
They are, and it was one of my biggest fears as a parent. And now watching them grow up, at 10 is my oldest, and I'm like, oh, shit, I didn't have to worry about any of that. Like,
but also, you're a strong
care.
father figure, and it sounds like you have a healthy home for the most part, that like they're growing up in an environment where they are nurtured into their best selves, and they have a good role model to show them the way, at least as best as you can.
And I bring home Little Caesars, once a month.
And then backhand them if it's necessary.
Yeah.
Right? But
the right leadership and fatherhood is so important. And I think that good fathers is the number one commodity that we need to cultivate in this country.
So
hands down.
We went from, we have about 200 years of crime data, right?
Yeah.
And for the first 275 years of that data, the most accurate predictor of crime was poverty until the last 25 years when it is fatherless homes.
Yep.
Over the last generation, it's become fatherless homes. And it's super important to, in the same way, like just the polarity of masculine and feminine, the masculine gives the feminine the protection it needs to do its thing, and the feminine gives the masculine the empathy it needs to do its thing and then come back home and recover from it, right? Kids, we need all of this stuff happening. Kids need that stability as well to become what they really are. Kids are creators for the most part, right? And they're getting back into it now. And I think as a result, they're doing this creator part that makes sense to them right now, which is like YouTube or Roblox or Minecraft or whatever the fuck else. But the next big leap in production is going to be narrative again. It will always come back to narrative, storytelling, right?
Yeah.
That's what we as human beings want most. We want to hear stories. We've been doing it since language became a thing tens of thousands of years ago. And that's what religion is too, by the way.
Yeah.
That's what religion is.
I'm not believe in the story.
I'm not saying it's just mythology or just that, but it's a way to organize our entire civilization, all the things we believe, our story for how the universe came about even, but mostly our ethics, right? The things that we hold dear to ourselves. It's a way to organize those things into a few stories and then share them with each other, right? Refine them over time, share them with the next generation and the next. And has the added benefit of keeping our civilization close and strong. Culture is not about exclusion or about xenophobia or any of that bullshit. It's about survival, right? We are English civilization. Yep. That's what America is. We are English civilization in the same way that Constantinople became Rome and the Byzantines were the barbarians in the Western Roman Empire, right? We are British civilization. It's fruition. We are the culmination of English civilization. We're the best. right? That's why we're the best, as a matter of fact.
Yep.
People need to recognize that and stop seeing it as some kind of detriment or like, oh, people did some shitty things back in the day. A lot of people did shitty things back in the day. How do our ideas stack up against other people's ideas?
Yeah.
There's no fucking country on earth that even comes close to what we've done here. And think about that. Even in the context of the last 60 years being a complete fabrication, we still have the ability now to talk about it and unravel it. You will not find that anywhere else on earth. This conversation will get you arrested in the UK, in Germany, and a bunch of other fucking places.
I mean, I would take that metaphor a step further and argue that in the exact same way we were talking about young people seeing through the failures of the generations above them and learning in advance of that and being so many steps ahead, what America was, it was the child of the failure of the British civilization. It was the child of seeing the British civilization has been taken over by the ruling monarchy class, the bankers that are in bed with them all, and these oligarchical fucking psychopaths. And they broke away, not really because of taxes as much as that was like, the snap, but it was because of the banking control. And they came to America to break free of the banking class that ruled Europe and started with, we learned from before that if you put people in charge, even in a democracy, people can be fooled and then your whole government slides away. So we need to codify the right way to rule into a document and make that document the guiding light. And because we were the experiment in a constitutional republic, that is like the bedrock, right? That made us the greatest nation in the world. And to this day, it's still proving true. If we had not had the Constitution through the last 20 years, America, I mean, long before that, but America would be zero right now.
Yeah, I mean, think about Canada. Canada has a charter of rights, but they don't have a constitution.
Yeah.
Which means a charter of rights are basically like, here's generally what we believe.
Suggestion.
This is generally what we believe, right? But they were able to pass C-16, which criminalized. This is how Jordan Peterson got famous, by the way. He was a professor at University of Toronto, and this bill gets passed where if you misgender or dead name somebody, you can be fined for it. And he was like, no, I'm not doing that.
Yep.
Fuck you. I'm not doing it. But he was aggressive about it, but he made the best point of his entire career. A lot of stuff's happened since then. He's dressed like the Riddler now, but I still like
that's fun.
I still like him, but
That's just fun.
Yeah, the most important thing he ever said was, I've refused to accept that this is settled science, and I'm also not entirely sure that it's good for these people that I participate in their delusion.
Yeah.
Right? And as a matter of fact, I don't think it's good for them to participate in this delusion. And
I mean, he cracked the conversation open when no one else would in a big way. And it kind of goes back to the same point of do you let your movement get subverted that we were talking about earlier with Israel is the gay community got fucking subverted by this trans bullshit, which is clearly not organic.
No, which is lucky, for
and they're
us.
pissed, by the way.
Yeah, it's lucky for us.
All my gay friends are like, dude,
I'd be so pissed.
Organizations like Gays Against Groomers have been really good, but to be honest, and this isn't their fault, but that organization should have stepped up in 2010. You know what I mean? It just nobody knew it would ever get. No, it's almost incredulous. You know what I mean?
You couldn't imagine how far they
nobody
would
would ever believe that stupid shit.
How quick it happens.
Holy moly!
Holy shit!
But the same thing has to be done by the right. James Lindsay always calls it the woke right. I don't know if I agree with that.
I don't agree with much that James Lindsay says, but that's just me.
Yeah, I don't know if I agree with that specific characterization of it, but you do see like a lot of, and this happens in any kind of movement, you see a lot of stupidity, and then worse is mid-wittery. Somebody that's got the ability to articulate a point so far, and then they stop, right? Stop asking questions. And I think that's a big problem, right? There's no, intellectual curiosity has no end.
Yeah.
Right? Like this isn't a football game with 4 quarters. This goes on for the rest of your life and your kids and grandkids' lives.
I mean, that's like everyone in media should listen to what you just said on repeat every morning when they start their day, because it's a endless trap that we can always fall into every day. And I'm a great example of someone who I came out of nowhere, hit it huge, quit my jobs, and immediately had this dream life. And at any moment, every day, I could stop asking more questions, sign a big ass contract with that agency or that network or them, and then just start towing the line and stop this pursuit of truth and knowledge and questioning wherever that leads. And I'd be set, and I'd make money and be great, and it'd be easy, right? But in this work, the goal is not to get famous. The goal is not to get followers. The goal is not those fake ass accolades. The goal is truth and knowledge and just becoming a better person, a smarter person, understanding the world. And that shit's fun. That is fulfilling. That is meaningful. I can be proud of that. I can inspire my children to be proud of that legacy. And so that's where you get real. Like, suppose you end your career with 100,000 followers, but you spend a whole lifetime doing something meaningful and inspiring your children. That is an infinitely better way to go out than to say I made it big and I got rich and then I sold out and stopped learning and growing and just became a shell of myself for the rest of my life.
I agree with that. Yeah, it's like the thing that I'm most proud of that we've done on this show over especially the last 6 years, is we've sent collectively somewhere. It's hard to track the total numbers, but somewhere between like 6,000 and 10,000 dudes to go get their testosterone levels checked.
Yeah,
right.
Dude.
And if I'm full of shit every day, I can't do that. And I think we need. Part of this American Reformation that's going on right now has to be developing a healthy skepticism without becoming cynical and nihilistic, right? It's like your attitude as an American should be prove it. Vaccines are safe and effective, fucking prove it, right?
Girls can be men.
Girls can be men.
Can
prove
be girls.
It. Yeah,
prove it.
Yeah. Fucking, I should eat 12 servings of fucking grains a day. Fucking prove it. Show me the data that says that, right? And you don't have to be a cunt about it all the time, although I do choose to do that.
It's kind of fun.
It's funny.
It's a lot of fun.
You don't have to. You can just say, hey, prove it. And I'm not going to participate until you do.
I think that's real masculinity too.
Yeah.
I think that real masculinity is not this like puff up your fucking chest and act like a hotshot alpha, whatever bullshit word they're using these days. Real masculinity is leading the way toward, and it's not stopping when it's like, oh, I've made it, it's easy now. It's not acquiescing to any given point, like moment. You're constantly protecting your community from threats, foreign and domestic, so to speak. That whether that be your family unit, your children, your country, yourself and your mind. It's just like being a real man is continually doing the work and continually asking, like, am I on the right path? Am I doing what I believe deep down is right? And I would argue that's the God that is rising right now. I'd argue that's the new religion that is rising, and it's not going to look anything like old religions.
Right, that's what I'm talking about. It's not a church, it's an ideology,
Yeah.
and it's how you choose to live your life. And the last part of this, you talked about being a good father too. It's about being a good husband, where because of the technology and everything that goes on, and I tell my friends this all the time, I'm like, if you go and cheat on your wife or girlfriend or whatever it is, you're probably going to get caught.
Yeah, it's not the 1950s anymore. You're not a vacuum
salesman.
salesman.
Some text message or a fucking DM or a camera or somebody out, especially if you're in the public
or just
eye.
your vibe trying to lie every day
right,
to the most
like
important person
Kid
in your
Rock
life.
and Bobert, right?
Yeah.
Which now they found love in a hopeless place, and I'm cheering for them now.
Yeah.
But there's that too, where you're also like, all right, cool. Well, then maybe I should be better for my kids or myself as a person and everything else, and like that changes without you kind of even thinking about it, just because some piece of technology came out where you're like, oh, my buddy got fucked there or whatever. So you're like, okay, cool. So it's all slowly changing in a positive direction. And one thing that I'm really concerned about is robots ripping our fucking faces off. But that's
one problem at a time.
Yeah, one problem at a time.
I'm not in any way concerned about that.
I
think we'll be all right.
I can't tell yet. We'll see.
No,
We'll see.
Even if it means we have to go to war with them, I think we'll win.
Yeah. We have. I mean, all we need are EMPs.
Yep.
Like literally.
Bingo.
Just the first solar flare.
And we've
that
got
happens.
those stocked, that's for sure.
Yeah, we've got a lot, yeah.
I actually saw a really funny tinfoil conspiracy theory the other day that basically took the ancient aliens, like the Graham Hancock hypothesis of the pre-Diluvian era, and said, what if AI already took over and then a solar flare wiped them out, and that is why we see all these pyramids? I was like, that's a fun theory.
I'd be okay with that.
Who knows?
I'd be all right with that.
Yeah.
Now's the point of the show. We get to the Drinkin' Bro of the Week, which is someone who has inspired you or helped you become the person you are today.
Oh, do I get to do this right now?
You do.
Oh,
Who would you like
cool.
to give the Drinkin' Bro of the Week to?
Like someone like in the media in my life.
Anybody that's helped you out.
Yeah,
Family,
Netanyahu
work,
or anybody. Yeah.
Anne Frank.
I mean, I could give it to a million people.
Lizzo.
Not Anne Frank. I got questions, but definitely, my mind goes to someone kind of like someone else that's like shoulder to shoulder with me all along the way. His name's James Lee. He's another creator on TikTok, and obviously, like, my mom means more to me than James Lee, but I just want to shout out James because I met James really early on in my TikTok days, like super beginning, and he is right in line with like this mindset of truth at all costs. Just ask questions, be a man, do the thing, and he's just such a great personality and voice. And then later on, I got to meet him in person, and then I got to collaborate with him, and then and it's just cool to have other like-minded people along the way that are side by side for truth. So shout out to James Lee. His handles are 5149 James Lee, meaning like 51%, 49% of the population, like right in the middle. Like where do we actually dissect the issues? He's a Breaking Points contributor, and he's just a super great researcher. Follow him on X, follow him on TikTok.
Okay, cool.
Yeah, super homie. He's cool.
Hell yeah, man.
I like him a lot.
And then, congratulations on all your shit. Again, we use it a lot on this show, and we wanted to have you on.
Thanks,
because it started by accident. And all of a sudden, I remember that guy. I remember that guy. And we're on daily, so everybody that listens, every single day will know. And it's like, oh, fuck, you finally had that guy on that you keep showing all the clips from.
I mean, let that be a lesson to people trying to come up in the content world. Is like, it's not about trying to do this strategy or that strategy or this editing or that. It's about creating value. And if you create value repeatedly, people will just inherently see value, and they'll want to interact with value, and you'll be contributing. So
1.1 million subscribers on Twitter in 18 months is pretty fucking impressive.
I appreciate it.
And then the last question from the chat here is, does he secretly want to be a fireman with the mustache?
Fuck no, dude.
Okay.
There actually was one more question. I didn't see it earlier, but it was something about Ford being anti-Semitic.
Yeah.
They don't agree with your opinion on it, but I don't know anything about that.
Whole rabbit hole on Ford. I mean, I think that there's
Henry Ford?
Yeah, there's this huge contingent. I think that a lot of the people are actually like pro-Hitler on Twitter that are like, don't rag on Ford for trying to pretend he was evil because I like the Nazis. And it's like, cool, bro. That's good. I mean, Ford, I don't think he was necessarily like I think that Ford was anti-Semitic in the same way that I'm anti-Semitic.
The same way that Walt Disney was, probably.
Yeah.
Right?
I mean,
which is why like a white man in the fucking 1910s is probably a
Well, I mean, have you read
right?
International Jew?
No.
By Ford.
No.
So Ford did write an entire book where he researched for many years the international Jewry, and he wrote a whole book called The International Jew that was calling out
Henry Ford?
Oh yeah, dude. Yeah.
I'm gonna rewrite that book today.
Yeah, calling out like the international Jewish banking cabal for their control, because he grew up during that time when people like the Rockefellers were getting funded by the Rothschilds the Industrial Revolution was largely funded by the Rothschild banking empire, not entirely, and Ford was one that, I don't know. I mean, he was openly against them, but he was a part of the business plot with Smedley Butler. Do you guys know that we had an attempted Nazi coup in America before World War II?
No, I didn't know.
Crazy story. Yeah. Like all these titans of industry, like Henry Ford, George Bush's grandfather, a bunch of them. They were ready to pull the trigger on having a military leader named Smedley Butler, who is the most famous, most decorated general in all of American history. He was going to lead a veterans organization of, I think, 50 or 500,000 U.S. veterans on the Capitol, take over America, and install a Nazi dictatorship right in, I think it was 1935-ish or something like that. Crazy story. So Ford, he's got some history. And I recently made a piece about the Ford Dodge thing that went on. Dodge sued Ford because Ford was trying to pay his workers more. Dodge was like, fuck you got to pay me more because I'm a shareholder. And that gave rise to this piece of legislation, or this ruling, that is basically made it legally required for corporations to treat their shareholders.
Fiduciary responsibility.
Fiduciary duty to their shareholders.
It's Chris Phelan's saying he was anti-capitalist.
Ford? Yeah, I mean, I don't know. I'm no expert. Like, let's be clear. I'm no expert on anything I talk about. I've researched as far as I can speak, and I try to speak within my research and understanding. And I know a fair bit about Ford, but I'm no historian, and I don't know his whole fucking history.
Most people that refer to themselves stringently as capitalists are anything but, frankly.
Yeah.
There's actually a great book called The Myth of Capitalism that everybody should read. I've discussed it a bunch of times before. And if you're really interested in all of this stuff that he's talking about, I would also recommend reading this book called America's 60 Families. 60.
That sounds like a fun book.
Yeah, so it was written in 1937 by a man named Ferdinand Lundberg, and it's about how the same families had been ruling America for some time. And those families, there's 60 of them in
Vanderbilt,
total. Rockefeller, J.P. Morgan, Ford, Vanderbilt, Mellon Carnegie, Guggenheim, Whitney, DuPont, Astor, who you may know from Waldorf Astoria, right? These families, and then Samuel Zemurray, Harvey Firestone, Frederick Prince, all these people that were just like basically an aristocracy that formed sometime between the early part of the 19th century and the middle part of the 20th century.
Yeah.
And I'm pretty sure that the Rodhams are in there as well. Hillary's fucking family. Yeah, everybody should read this book. Now the guy was he was kind of a critic of capitalism as well, but look past that and just look at the information on the individuals he's posting. Because so think about this: you're Marxist or quasi-Marxist writer in the early fucking 1930s, right? And you're looking into all these families that are super powerful, and they all call themselves capitalists. They're all industrialists and capitalists and shit. But really, they're monopolists. And that's what the myth of capitalism is about. These people aren't capitalists, they're monopolists. Fucking Berkshire Hathaway, look at their trading trends. They primarily, their big purchase trades are only in monopolies. Fucking Walmart, Amazon, shit like that.
Yeah.
That's how he's made his money.
It works so well in this system.
And it's not like Berkshire Hathaway's job is to make money for their people. So investing in big companies is what they should do, right? Big companies that are basically like you, as close as you can get to a security as possible is what you should be investing in if you can, right? But the result of that is monopolization.
Yeah.
Right.
Yeah. Oligarchy.
Yep.
Plutocracy.
However you want to phrase it, that is the ultimate result of it. Even if they didn't intend it to be. Like, these people are individuals who are trying their best to make the best possible outcome for themselves and their families. And I don't have anything against that, right? That's why we need a system that's resilient against that shit.
I mean, it comes back to your point earlier of like, it's never the full that or the full this. It's always a balanced perspective within. There are very legitimate criticisms of what capitalism has turned into today. But that does not mean you should fucking go to communism and like pretend that communism is your solution.
Like, because what's worked really well.
Yeah, do just like the fucking basic research about either one, and you realize there are flaws. And I see that that is where we're all moving in this sort of maturing process we're going to. And that's what I see politically too. Is right now the left looks retarded, but in like the leftist ideals, we need them to balance out conservative ideals in some regards. And the example I always turn to is we want regulation of monopolizing tendencies of these giant corporations. And that is inherently a leftist concept to regulate corporations. But we want a little bit of that. We just want it to be rational, and we don't want to have to cut our dick off in order to have that.
And we don't want government choosing winners and losers, because that's what regulation means to government.
But we want individual sovereignty. We want corporations to be free to act, for their best interest to progress the capitalistic society. So we want both. Like, we want a rational discussion about both. And we're slowly getting rid of all this fucking politicization and polarization that is inherently just a subversion tactic.
Last comment from Tandon Friley. I need help. For 3 days now, I've heard the forbidden chirp upstairs in my hallway. It's either my smoke alarm battery or a black guy secretly moved into my attic.
Yeah, can we hear it? There it is. Okay,
Bingo.
I'm going to go with the black guy.
You should definitely call somebody.
Yeah, so we did that for you. We appreciate it. He threw us 20 for that chirp. That could have bought you a brand new
Drinkin'
smoke
Bros,
alarm.
saving lives.
Yeah,
Out every single day. We appreciate you tuning in. Go to iTunes, rate the show a 5-star, and leave a quick review. Also, head on over to Spotify, just a 5-star, and you can walk away. Ian, tell everybody where they can find you.
I just want to really quickly say that this has been one of the most fun podcasts I've done. You guys are a ton of, and I don't just say, like, you guys are genuinely so fun to talk to. Anyone who's not already subscribed to Drinkin' Bros, you should probably subscribe. I'm going to start watching a lot more of your content with my time. If you want to follow me on X, Ian Carroll Show on X.
That's where
From there you can find all the other shit. But X is where the most free speech happens right now, so that's where I talk the most shit. So,
yes, and that's where we always find your videos to include in our shows.
I've got a whole rebrand and a brand new website coming out here soon, so there will be a whole bunch of other cool things coming out on my end. But for now, stay on X, and I'll update you on all that.
And by the way, most of his content ends with a question mark, at least a soft question mark in most cases, which means
figure it out for yourself.
Get up off your fat ass and read something.
Do your own research. Think for yourself.
Exactly.
I am just a dude.
Thank you, Ian. We appreciate it.
Pretend to be a dude, disguise as another dude.
That's all you got to do. Disguise as another dude. For D'Anthony Hollaway, Ian Carroll, I'm Ross Patterson. This is the Drinkin' Bros podcast. Good night, everyone.